Yes.
Most of you have been brought up, I believe, to have a right to your own opinion. How many of you understand that? Everybody's been brought up to have a right to their own opinion. If you live across the street from me, and I see 10 guys coming out of your apartment, I can have all kinds of opinions, right? The truth is, I don't know what you do. You could be a language instructor, a ballet instructor, an art instructor. The right correct answer is, I don't know. And when you give everybody a right to their own opinion, it's very dangerous. Because I used to ask people, do you think we'll ever get to the moon? No, not in 1,000 years. I said, have you studied rockets? No. Do you know anything about space? No. But if you give everybody a right to their own opinion, it hurts. Just say, I don't know what you don't know. Is that all right? Okay. The first word I want to attack is, or the words, is language. The language that we use every day has been designed hundreds of years ago. Everybody doesn't understand it. Therefore, it's very difficult to talk to people. When you talk to people, they may shake their head, but it has to do with their background, what they hear. They don't always hear what you say. Like if you were brought up in the South, say uneducated region. Can you hear me back there? Okay. You might say, I'm gonna get me a nigger and I'm gonna kick his behind. Is that you speaking or what you pick up from your environment? Every word you use, your mother said cup, table, light, over and over again. Mama, papa, over and over again. Even your facial expressions, happy birthday, all that's picked up from the environment. Do you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Even your facial expressions. If somebody says, my brother was just killed by a Mack truck, you say, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. You don't even know his brother, but that's what you say automatically. Is that right? Most instances. Therefore, we cannot talk to people. We can talk at them. You can only talk to them if they're technically trained. If you say this unit has 6 transistors, they know exactly what you mean. But when you read the Bible, you pick it up and read it, it's subject to interpretation. He might read it and say, this is what Jesus meant. She might say, oh no, he meant that. He might say, you're both wrong, he meant this. So you have the Lutheran, the Seventh-day Adventist, the Catholic, because it's subject to interpretation, called Tuamotu, about 300 miles east of Tahiti. So I got a job on a boat again and worked my way over. Yes.
What year was that?
About 65 years ago. About. I wanted to know what things were like in primitive people. When I got there, I brought mirrors and beads, which I was going to give to the natives anyway, to say I didn't come to take anything away from you. I've come to give you these mirrors and beads. They like mirrors and beads. After I was there about an hour and a half, they were already inside my thatched hut. I opened my suitcase and they were giving out my mirrors and beads to one another with a great big grin on their face. But I was somewhat normal then. So I said, you know, what's going on here? And they said, you have too many. I had a lot of mirrors and beads. And they didn't understand why it wasn't distributed. Of course, I had a little difficulty with that. But the thing that surprised me most is nobody wore clothing. The men and the women were swimming nude ever since they were 6, 7 years old. And I never saw a male stare at a female body that was brought up there. And you understand that or not? They look at the eyes of a female when they talk. Never, hey, get a load of that chick. That's learned in this country, and England, and France, and Germany. And we think that's the way men are. That isn't the way men are. That's the way they're made by culture. And so anybody doesn't understand what I'm talking about. The culture you live in shapes your values, your books, the movies, the role models, everything. including customs, religion, all that. And religion dates way back. The language is so old that it hardly has a reference. When the Pope comes to this country, he points to God. When he comes to China, he points the wrong way. They didn't know the earth was round the old days. They thought God was up there. If the earth is round, you point to God the wrong way. You go to Brazil, it's sideways. You know what I mean? The Pope apparently doesn't keep up with things. Don't get mad at me if you're Catholic. Just think about what I'm talking. I'm trying to tell you that the world you live in is unreal. Its language, its customs, its values, its concepts of right and wrong, good and bad, are all artificial. Now let me back it up a little. If you go to ancient Rome, look in your history books, they used to feed Christians to lions. How many of you knew that? Were they bad? Well, they were brought up to believe in many different gods. The god of fertility, the god of vegetation, the god that produces food, the god that gives us victory. They had a whole bunch of gods. And the Christian came to town. Said there's only one God. And they said, listen to that jerk. Because everybody was brought up to believe in many gods. So they said, these people have come here and they're corrupting our society. So they fed them to lions. They put them in an arena and they starved the lions for about a week to put on a good show. They took the clothing off the Christians. The whole family used to come to see Christians being fed to lions. And the kids would say, Daddy, can I come next week to see Christians fed to lions? And Daddy used to say, if you behave yourself. Was Daddy bad? No. Was he stupid? No. He was normal to that culture. Is there anybody that doesn't understand that? Normal to that culture. It also says, judge not lest you be judged. And everybody does jury duty. Judges are the worst. The Supreme Court judges would be considered unbalanced in the future, or unsane. Now all the stuff you're brought up to is to honor these people and look up to them. There's nothing dumber than a politician, but I don't want you to take my word for it. This is what I want you to do. Go up to any politician you admire and say, how can you increase the agricultural yield so people can have more food? They usually say, I don't know. It's not my field. How can you transfer energy across the country with minimum losses? I don't know. How can you prevent war? I don't know. They really don't know anything. None of them. All the way back to George Washington. How many of you knew that George Washington had 300 slaves? Today he'd be run out of town. So all these jerks that you admire all the way back knew nothing. Everything that you have today is technical. Your lights, your washing machine, your refrigerator. Without that, we'd have a hand tool economy. You'd have to work the farm, kill the bugs, you know, and nurture your plants. You'd be there all day long. It's technology, the electric light, that frees you to do other things, spend time with your kids, or due to the internet. They're getting new ways of thinking, and they're revolting against established governments. Once a government is established, who decides what form it takes? By the in-group who made most money. They make the decisions. They make the decisions that got them there. So they try to teach you what keeps them in power. They don't teach you anything that will unseat them. Do you understand that? Okay. This is all governments. They are all basically corrupt. Not intentionally, but due to their upbringing. In the free enterprise system, it's every man for himself. If I can ship stuff to China and get it done cheaper, I will lay you off. I'm not going to give you a pension either, just lay you off. So if it's every man for himself, you can't have decency and ethics. If you work in my department store, and a woman comes over and says, how much is that lamp? And you say, that's $10. She says, I'll take 2. But you being an honest Christian, say if you go 3 stores down, you get the same lamp for $8. You wouldn't be working for me very long. Do you understand that? Decency and ethics is impossible in the monetary system. If I put up $500,000, help you get elected, you owe me a favor, brother. The monetary system corrupts all nations. You don't build a big city when you don't have enough arable land. If you do that, you're going to have malnutrition, territorial disputes. Do you understand that? Territorial disputes do not come up because people are warlike. It comes up because of deprivation. If you deprive people of certain things, if you pay a man minimum wage, and his wife says, honey, I've been wearing the same dress for 3 weeks, I need a new dress. He says, honey, I need a brake job. If I don't get a brake job, I can't get to work. And I don't have enough for a brake job until the next paycheck. So they're up to here in stress, the poor, always have been. When they borrow money from a bank, they're in more debt. And this nation thrives, all nations, on debt, putting you in debt. The public, not the wealthy. They put the public in debt. And this can't go anywhere. In other words, Obama bailed out Chevy company because they couldn't compete with Toyota. Toyota turns out a better product than a lower price. And unless Chevy comes up with a blueprint of a cheaper car, more miles per gallon, longer lasting, they will not surpass them. If America does not think of the future, other nations will pass us by, like China. You understand? We have to undo our thinking. That's why an established society is no good. We need an emergent society. Emergent means your computers are getting different every year, lighter, smaller. They do more. Not only do little units, iPods, take pictures, they give you all kinds of information. And in the future, they'll even do more. Our society, we're emergent. You couldn't raise a child the same way. You'd have to revise your school books every 2 years to update them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Good old George Washington, he was a stupid man. All your presidents were stupid, and still are to this day. And all politicians say nothing. When you listen to them, don't take my word. Listen to what they say. Nothing. They never talk about anything. All of them, Democrat, Republican, Communist, Socialist. Where did I get this? During the Depression, 1929 crash. My grandfather said to me, Jacque, he says, people came from all over the world to America, and they brought the languages, the printing press. A guy named Algebra, an Arab, gave us algebra. The ancient Egyptians gave us a zero. He said, we owe so much to so many countries. Never pledge allegiance to any one country. Pledge allegiance to the earth, the trees, the forests, the oceans, and everybody on it. In school, the teacher says, everybody raise your right hand. We're going to pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. I said, I can't do that. Due to my grandfather. I think I agreed with it. But the teacher didn't like that, so she grabbed me by the ear right to the principal's office. And she said, he doesn't want to pledge allegiance to the flag. And the principal said to the teacher, you're excused. The minute she walked out, he put his arm around me and said, why don't you want to pledge allegiance? Everybody does. I said, everybody once believed the earth was flat. That doesn't make it flat, what everybody believes. He said, what do you think of American history? Well, I said, sir, can I be ruthlessly frank with you? He says, of course, it's the only way to be. I said, strictly BS. I'll say bad science. What's the matter with it? Well, everybody in the history book always does the right thing. They never make mistakes. Edison said he had to make 7,000 different elements to make an electric lamp glow. Everybody made mistakes. Things didn't work out. And so, the first man that built an airplane was really a Frenchman years ago. He looked at the birds flying and says, if only I can fly like a bird. So he made 2 wings, 3 feet long on each side, that he wore. And he put his arm in his sleeve, and he figured he'd beat his wings and fly. And he jumped off the Eiffel Tower, and he died. And his brother-in-law wrote, make wings larger next time. There is no way to know. How do you know how large to make wings before airplanes existed? That means that no human being ever makes a mistake. They don't know. A guy catches a guy in bed with his wife, he shoots them both. He doesn't know how to deal with it. He's never taught how to relate in school. How do you relate to other people? How do you disagree without getting angry? How do you find meaning in your own life? None of that. You learn to be a carpenter, bricklayer, salesperson, an engineer, a doctor, but you don't learn how to relate to people. What do you think of our teaching methods? I said, they're terrible. He said, what's the matter with them? Well, when I spelled cat with a K as a kid, and the teacher said, that's wrong. Those words don't tell you anything. Think about it. That's wrong. What does that mean? Nothing. If she said, we use a C instead of a K, that would tell me something. But that's wrong, doesn't tell me. She says, that's not what I told you. That doesn't tell me anything. Our language does not have enough information in it. It has bawling out, attitudes, feelings, but little information. I'm trying to tell you that your country is wrong. We have to redesign the world. If we don't want war, if we don't want poverty, hunger, unemployment, we have to redesign the way society works. I'm going to tell you about that redesign, and tell me what you don't like. They were wrong about people not buying books if they got the books free. They read more, and they knew more, and they asked more questions, and they bought more books. So I decided next door to the library to have a camera center, where anybody, can afford it or not, can check out a camera. Next door to that, there's musical instruments. Next door to that, there's anything that people want, you check out, just like the library. That's the end of crime. Nobody's going to break your window and take your watch or rob your house if they can get it at the access center. Now, if you steal a watch worth $150, and if it's your 3rd crime, you might go to jail for 7 years. You know how many watches that is? It's cheaper to give the guy a watch. Think about it. You give him medical care, food, clothing, right? 7 years. And he doesn't learn anything except he hates the fact that he's been put in jail. The Venus Project has no armies, no navies, no prisons, no police. It makes things available to people, and no money. You can't pay off any politicians. You can't sell drugs. You can't open a house of prostitution if there's no money. Everybody can go to the Access Center and access whatever they want. But to do that, you have to declare the earth the common heritage of all the world's people. To be honest, where did we get this country from? We stole it from the Indians.
Yep.
Is that right?
That's correct.
By force and violence. We killed many, many Indians, but some Indians fought back. They didn't like it. They were pushed on to the desert region. For every Indian you killed, you got $10. The agency said, how do we know that? Bring back a piece of the Indian. So we started a scalp. We did the scalping. And we bring back 10 scalps, and we got paid. Where did all this come from? God made it. How long did it take him to make? 6 days. Were you there? How do you know how long it took him to make? Well, if God made everything, he did a lousy job of man, because man destroys the oceans, one another. He's killed more people in God's name. Do you believe in God? My God or your God? And it's your God, and boom. My God's the only God. So when you think about these things, how primitive man is. He still tries to influence God. So I'm going to take the kids on a picnic next week, so I'd like the sun to be out. He's telling God what to do. Not only that, but But there's a man who says, I got farm here, and it hasn't rained in 6 weeks. We need rain. And so if you listen to everybody, you get just what you got. The church doesn't deal with these problems. The church, if you carry out the teachings of Christ, you live eternally. Now let's think about that. Suppose you lived in heaven eternally. You're 50,000 years old. You wouldn't want to talk to anybody anymore. You've heard it all. The girl shows you an engagement ring. You say, I've seen that for years. Well, what about, do you understand? You won't find children amusing anymore if you're 50,000 years old in heaven. And if you're sitting on a cloud and you look down, you see the starving people of Africa with swollen bellies. Will you have peace up there? When nations are all always at war with each other? The story is ridiculous. God knows everything, and he made a man and a woman, and he made a snake which walked upright, and said to the woman, eat of the fruit of knowledge. And she did, and he kicked them both out. Is this an all-loving God? Doesn't make sense. God said to Noah, I don't like the world I made, according to the Bible, not me. I'm going to flood everything out, everybody, every animal. I want you to build yourself an ark and take 2 kinds of every animal. So he did that. He built an ark. It would be about a mile long if he took 2 kinds of every animal. And who cleans the shit out of that boat? Larry King said, what do you think of Christianity? Once, and I said, it's a wonderful idea. When are they putting it into practice? I never met a person that behaved that way, that loved his enemy, turned the other cheek, no jealousy, never say anything bad about anybody, not judging anybody. I don't know enough about that person to give you my judgment. You don't know what makes a serial killer that kidnaps women and murders them. You don't know. Do you know? I'm going to tell you for the first time, so you'll know. There was a guy named Albert Fish. They believe he ate 45 children. When they caught him, the public wanted to burn him alive slowly. They hated him. A psychiatrist named Wortham said, don't kill him. The government said, what do you mean? Well, I want to try to find out what made him that way. And if I can find that out, I can stop that condition, if I can. So they said, well, go ahead. And here's what he found out. When the boy was 7 years old, he was touching his private parts. All kids touch their head, their ears, without thinking of sex. They touch every part of their body. But his mother was an old-time Baptist. She said, you burn in hell touching that body. That's satanic and evil. And the kid started to shake. And the mother says, at 2 in the morning, you were screaming. So she went into the bedroom. He stuck needles into his genitals because he didn't want to go to hell. Can you understand that or not? And he used to try to take minority kids, Mexicans and blacks, into the woods and try to cut their genitals off to save them from hell. Is he bad? No. He's normal to the environment he came from. There are no bad people. That's why there's no prisons and no police in the same world. We work on people and help them to understand the world they live in. We don't teach them or have the Mickey Mouse Club, where your kid joins some asshole club, which has no meaning at all. And you don't read to children, Cinderella touches a white mouse and it becomes a horse. All kinds of crap that you bring up kids. And then you tell people to always be honest with your children. They tell you that all the time. So the kid says, Daddy, where do babies come from? The stork brings them. Line number 1. Line number 2, how does Santa Claus get down the chimney, Dad? It's only that narrow. Well, we lie to them about a lot of things. And the example we set sets their values. And if you give them a lot of fairy tales while they're growing up, you damage their thinking ability.